So when you open up Google Maps, it always asks for two things: your destination, but also your starting point. Now, most of us are great at dreaming about the destination. Financial freedom, retiring early, buying a home, taking that big once-in-a-lifetime trip. But the app can't give you any directions without first knowing where are you right now. Like, turn on your settings, right? Show where you are, or at least put it in. So look, when I first started with gym training years and years and years ago, I had to weigh myself. I had to measure the size of my body, figuring out how healthy I was, and just figuring out my weaknesses and what they were so that I could improve. Measuring helps. What gets measured gets mastered, and the same is true with your finances. Without diagnosing your current starting point, your goals are just wishes. So look, this step is non-negotiable, because here's the truth. Your future wealth isn't random. It's the direct result of your income and your expenses, what you're taking in and what you're spending. And the difference between those two is your savings. And then you are optimizing that difference, right? So if those numbers are invisible, you're flying blind. And flying blind is how people stay stuck for years, even when they're working hard. A ship without a destination wanders aimlessly, but first, we need to know where our starting point is. Now, this isn't about guilt or shame, it's about clarity. Once you know your starting point, you'll see exactly which levers to pull, whether that's raising your income, reducing your unnecessary spending, paying off all debt, and then boosting your savings rate. And just like with Google Maps, once we set that starting point, we can look at different destinations and even test different routes to get there. And that's why in this first step, we're going to use a simple diagnostic framework, your net wealth. That's everything that you own with an N minus everything that you owe with an E, and your monthly cash flow. And that's the gap between what's coming in and what's going out. With those two numbers, right, your net wealth and your cash flow, we will have a crystal clear view of where you stand today and what's possible for your future. Look, you can use whatever works for you. You can create your own spreadsheet, and there are plenty of apps. Just don't get overwhelmed in anything too complicated that feels like a chore. That's not the point. The main thing is to stay on track. You first need to know your two numbers, your take-home income and your spending. Now, we're going to start by doing this monthly, but for the best results, these ones occur when you do this for yearly numbers. It's more accurate because it gives you a better average monthly picture. If you look at the yearly, this is going to take into consideration those annual vacations or the seasonal expenses like gifts, like holiday gifts, and potential income bonuses. Now, with your take-home or your net income, enter everything like your salary, your bonus, freelance, business, rental income if you've got rentals, dividend income, interest income, government benefits, child support, alimony if you're receiving anything, or any other type of income, right? Like the bank of mom, the bank of dad, right? Whatever you're actually getting, right? This is after tax. Your goal is to increase your income in the future. So this should be your baseline. Try to get an idea of what this average monthly income will be over your year and enter it into the budget column. With your expenses, again, you can use an app or your bank statements, but we are first looking at fixed or regular expenses like rent, and there are plenty of other ones like that. Then we're going to look at variable expenses or irregular spending, like dates. Again, plenty of other irregular spending. Could be your entertainment, you name it. Again, try to get an idea of what this average monthly spending will be over your year and enter it into the budget column. At this point, it's not super important to be detailed. We just want a ballpark idea. We're going to come back later and we're going to comb through it to plug the leaking holes. where you didn't realize you were spending so much. And we can reduce spending there without it hurting. But that's not the point right now. Right now, we want you to be consistent and to build good habits first. So we just need a rough idea of the overall total income after taxes and expenses. The gap between your income and your expenses is going to be your saving, which we will want to maximize and optimize to how it grows. So we can get you out of debt rather than further into debt. In fact, being further into debt is going to take you further and further away from your financial freedom. The bigger this savings gap is, the faster you can save and invest, and the faster you can buy back independence, options, time, freedom. Look, whatever you value and dream about the most. Just get your income and your spending down. Again, the difference between your income and your spending, it's called cash flow. Now, with that basic income and spending or cash flow done, the most important of all is your net wealth. This is the difference between the assets that you own with an N and the liabilities that you owe with an E. Now, more cash flow from income being higher than spending, that's going to boost your net wealth, which is good. Taking on more liabilities, on the other hand, that can lead you further and further into debt. It takes money out of your pocket. So think about liabilities as things that take money out of your pocket, assets that put money into your pocket. So think about liabilities like mortgages, credit card balances, car loans, personal loans. For now, let's focus on just naming your liabilities and naming your assets. On the flip side of the liabilities, assets are valuable, like savings, investments, property, rare possessions like art, if you've got luxury Rolex watches, or even some musical instruments like Steinway grand pianos, or Stradivarius for those that are in strings. Now list all your major purchases and their values. While liabilities take money out of your pocket, as I said, assets put money into your pocket. The key goal here is to increase the difference or increase your net wealth over time. So use income to buy assets. That's what the rich do. That's going to boost your net wealth. Income, it buys your lifestyle. You can afford a nice life. But net wealth buys you freedom. This is what really matters long term. This is why it's so important. It doesn't matter where you start from, right? Because you could be earning $300,000 a year, but spending all of it. You've got a great lifestyle, but if you stop working in the morning, you've no freedom. You've got to keep running on the hamster wheel. So what really matters is that you start to increase your net wealth from now on, whether you're earning very little or whether you're earning a lot. Doesn't matter either way. Every financial decision either builds assets or builds liabilities. So understanding the difference is the fastest way to start building real wealth versus feeling busy with money. Now, there are ways or hacks that you can do to improve your lifestyle without expenses, using things like credit card points, but that's a more advanced topic, and before we run, we're going to walk. So we're starting here with an honest, simple snapshot of where you are today, right now. So now that you see your starting point, right, your income, your expenses, and your savings rate, the natural question is, okay, but where does this actually get me? So here's the finish line, okay? We're cheating, we're looking in advance, looking at the ending, a bit of a spoiler, but this calculator gives us a snapshot. With the numbers I plugged in here for income and for expenses, it's calculated that for this person, it's a 35% savings rate. So they're saving 35% of their income. Now you'd be financially independent in about 25 years at this rate. The savings rate is the only number you need here. If you can nudge it higher, you can cut that down dramatically. So if you can drop your expenses or if you can raise your income, suddenly that timeline shrinks. That's the power of the savings rate. It's not about a dollar amount, it's about how much of your life that you keep. Every extra 1% that you save buys you years of freedom. I cannot stress this strongly enough. Let's have a look at this. So see that W? That's our assumed safe withdrawal rate. If we use 4%, so we're taking 4% out of our nest egg, then the freedom target is just 25 times your annual yearly spending. If you spend X dollars a year, then just multiply that by 25. If it's, let's say, $100,000 a year for those ballers out there, then it's 2.5 million is what you need. Again, your savings rate, S, is the speedometer. Raise the savings rate more by earning more or spending less, and your years to retire numbers shrink fast. By the way, that 4%, it comes from an old study. You can vary this. Again, 4%, you take 4% of your nest egg out, and you can increase that over time with inflation, and you're 95% of the time, roughly speaking, you'll be covered. You'll never get wiped out. Again, you can lower it if you're more conservative, or you can raise it if you're more kind of risk tolerant. But 4% is a good hard and fast rule. Doesn't give you everything, but it is pretty realistic over the long run. For now, remember one thing. Cutting $1 of annual spending permanently lowers the finish line by about $25 at a 4% safe withdrawal rate. So for instance, if your annual spending is $58,680, specific I know, the financial independent or FI target is $1.467 million, right? If you can lower your spending, then this gets smaller.